Hello. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. So before we get started, I have this exercise that I personally like to make people do when I do these talks because I realize that they can be very stuffy, they can be very awkward, they can be very quiet. And that is that I just ask everybody to just stand up and put both of your hands in the air and just shake off whatever negative energy may have been here before you got here that it has nothing to do with this moment right now. So maybe if somebody texted you something weird or emailed you something that you didn't want to see, or maybe you had to sit through a meeting that could have been an email or a phone call. I don't know what you did today, but I want to make sure that when you're here with me, that you're present with me, and I'm going to do my best to stay focused with y'all so that we get through this quickly, but also in case anybody has any questions that we can answer as many of them as possible. So the reason I wanted to discuss the topic of betting on yourself, it's one of those topics that I feel as though is super overdone. It's done all the time. People say that all the time, but I also find myself running into people that when I say bet on yourself, they look at me as if it's the first time they've heard it. So until I have people that stop looking at me that way when I bring the phrase up, I'm going to keep talking about it because it lets me know that we are still living in a society where people feel as though they're not completely worth it, even though they are. So what I wanted to do was, before starting on the whole topic of myself as a musician and myself as an artist and all this other stuff, I wanted to take it back to the first time that I realized I had to start betting on myself. And that was during high school. I found myself in a very, very rigorous choral program where I thought that I had to do everything that was told of me and to me to survive and to be successful. Because when you're in high school, your parents tell you to listen to your teachers as if that's the only thing that exists. And when you're a teenager, you convince yourself, well, my parents got me this far, my teachers got me this far. Of course they're telling me factual information. Of course everything they say to me is the end all be all everything. But then the older you get, you realize, oh crap, they're adults too. They screw up too. They probably are winging this also. So why should I be listening to them? The only difference between me and anybody else that has never been through the phase of betting on yourself is that I called the bullshit much earlier than a lot of my peers did. And that also meant that during high school, I spent a lot of time in detention and inside of those suspension classes where they make you write line after line after line because I asked questions, because I wanted to do things differently, because I felt as though the methods that were being given to me at that time didn't work. And years later, I had no idea that I would be right as far as the decisions that I was making for myself to stand up for myself in these situations. But at the time, I'm just a 16, 17-year-old girl that is pretty sure everything that's being told to me is wrong. But because these adults really didn't have a backup plan, their instinctual response to me at first was, no, ma'am, no, we're giving you the facts. And until you're an adult, we don't need this combative energy. Well, what they saw as combative was actually me just realizing that I was different. To go back a little further, I grew up in Southeast Houston, and I spent a lot of time living all over the city because my mom moved around. But this particular school that I'm discussing is called Clear Creek High School, and it's in League City, Texas. And I went there from 10th to 12th grade. And I went there after spending my entire life inside of inner city Houston. And so the reason that this is so important is that growing up in HISD, growing up in Aldine, growing up in a magnet program is completely different from moving to the suburbs and surrounding yourself with a bunch of kids that have never really seen that much diversity, even though they live in the most diverse city in the United States. And me automatically assuming, oh, wait, these kids are going to be just like the kids at my last school. So I'm going to continue to be myself. I'm going to continue to speak up like my mom taught me. And I'm going to continue to strive for success in my musical career. No, I was greatly mistaken that was how things were going to work. My first 2 weeks there was the first time that I was called an idiot, was the first time that I was called the N-word, was the first time that I was called anything really out of my name. And to have it all happen in this part of town that was told to me was going to be so much better, so much nicer, so much more wonderful because it was so much shinier and so much so much newer, I was really, really, really confused. And so at that time, that's where, I started reaching out to my parents, and they could only do so much with what they knew. But I started just asking people that were in positions that looked appealing to me. So that cool art teacher or theater teacher, the aunt that I would see every now and then because she was off, living her life child-free and having a good time. And I would just say, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do, but what would happen is that I would get pushback when people that were in positions of power were confused or they didn't know what to do. And my aunt said something so important to me back then, which was, so? And I said, wait, no, Aunt Dale, you don't understand. I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to do. I'm following the rules, and it's not working out. And she said, yes, so high school's only 4 years long. They can only put you in detention for so long. So why are you so worried about this temporary part of your life? And when I really thought about it, I couldn't really answer her. And she said, oh, because your mom and dad told you that this was the most important part of your life. And she said, you already know where you're going to college. You already know what you want to do with your life. You've already told us many times that you plan on dropping out of school to go and tour when the opportunity hits you. I sounded like a crazy person from age 5. So when I say that I said this to them, I did say this to them. And while now it sounds very normal to the people I speak to, when you're 13 and you're telling your mom, I'm going to leave college early to go on tour, you sound a little nuts. But she told me, all right, well, if this is what you see for yourself, just chase it, just go for it. And stop worrying about what these teachers think or what your parents think or what these other people think. Because if you get to that place, you already won. And so I started making that my focus. So every time I would get a detention because I, was late because I'd been gigging the night before or whatever, it didn't really matter. I just started taking the L's because I knew that one day the wins would start. And I didn't know when they would start. I didn't know it would be about 10 years of losses before the wins started. But let's get into the more fun part, because my favorite part when I do these talks is how petty I get to be. It's very I got to speak at my alma mater a few weeks ago, and it was really nice to come back and let folks know how badly I was treated and how I still came up because I didn't realize that that's normal. And when you come from a space of art, when you come from a place of wanting to just do something different in any kind of way, be it engineering, be it mathematics, whatever, when you choose to go against the grain, when you choose to argue about what everybody is convinced is what exists overall, that's when things get interesting, when you challenge the people around you. And once I realized that I was just going to be one of those annoying people throughout my life, life got more fun. Around 2011, I was in a headspace where I had convinced myself that I was no longer going to be doing music anymore. I had broken my ankle really, really badly. And I know a lot of people, when I give this conversation, they're like, I've broken an ankle before and I went back to work. No, the bone came out of both sides of my leg, and I wasn't allowed to do anything for quite some time other than, wallow in my self-pity and just try to heal. But during that time, I started seeing a lot of my peers start to come up. So I don't know who's from Houston or who's been involved in the music scene for a while, but when I say my peers, I mean the people that started out around the time that I did. So your Wild Moccasins, your Robert Ellis's, your Fat Tonys, and I would look around and I'd be like, why am I on my couch and I see my friends on MTV? Why am I on my couch and I see my friends out here chasing these dreams? And it's funny when I look back now and I ask myself these questions, because another one of my, has anyone here heard of Lizzo? So a lot of people don't know that Lizzo lived here for a long time. And she was one of my peers that would sit there with me at Natsuo and wait for our turn to go up. And a lot of times our turn would never come up because people weren't really trying to hear what we had to do. People weren't really trying to hear us sing. So it's really funny because back then both of us wore a lot more clothes than we do now. And so they taught you, 10 years ago that fat girls couldn't be successful, that, Black women really couldn't be successful. And so it's really funny to see the fat everything winning now. But those days at Natsuo, she would be there with her band Ellipses, and I would be there just trying to sit in with anybody, just waiting. And I would tell myself, well, you're already in the room, because 5 years prior, it was about me just being allowed to come into the spaces. And so I would have to keep reminding myself that my version of success and my timeline of success has nothing to do with what the universe actually has in store for me. And so this timeline, I'd want to say, was around 2007, 2008. And she got fed up and she moved to Minneapolis, and I got a real job, and I felt like, okay, well, if I can just sing karaoke every now and then, if I can just sit in with the DJ every couple of months, that'll at least give me that opportunity to get that creative outlet. And so I got an oil and gas job, and I worked in that for about 6.5 years before I got the call to do the Suffers. And when that call came, it was only supposed to be a fun project. It had nothing to do with, oh, we're going to go see the world. Oh, we're going to go do this and that. No, I got a call asking if I wanted to be in a ska band that covered pop music. And I was like, yes, because I'm a ska nerd, and it seemed normal. But then as we started diving a little bit more deeply into who we were as artists and the sound that was coming out and the sound that we were trying to force, we realized, wait, why are we doing this type of music just because we like it, not because it's the best music we could make? And so we set on this path to start making stuff that was actually the best version of what we could make, trusting that the product that we put out to the public would be marketable, would be valuable, that somebody would one day see that what we were putting out as us was good enough. And at first, a lot of people didn't feel that way. And it was a time in my life where I'd already been prepared because of all the bullshit, that by the time I got to, the Suffers, okay, great, that's fine. Your mom likes my band. You don't have to like my band. Your grandma likes my band, and she pays for all my merch, so it doesn't matter if you like my band. And once I started thinking like that, I had to start thinking about other things in just existence that I can't stand, that people absolutely love, that people spend tons of money on. Because at the end of the day, no matter what field you're in, no matter what it is you're chasing, there is room for you, and there is money waiting for you. And when I say this, it's as simple as, okay, I'm not that big of an Olive fan. I don't really like gin at all. But I bet some of y'all do. And I bet y'all are like, what do you mean? Well, it goes the same for cilantro. I love cilantro, but my best friend thinks it tastes like soap. And every time we go to a Mexican restaurant, I'm just like, bitch, get the extra cilantro. And she's like, I don't like cilantro. I said, for us, for me. And it's one of those simple comparisons that often remind me, just because it ain't for you doesn't mean that there's not a whole other world out here that wants this. And I had to start applying that to literally everything, including myself. When it came to the music that I was making, where I thought that, maybe people might not be interested in this. Well, why did I even write it? Why did I even present it? I felt that way, right? So that means that either I'm the only person on this planet that's ever had a bad boyfriend, that's ever dated, irresponsibly, that's ever made some poor choices, or there's possibly somebody out there that doesn't really make music that would love to hear a song about how they're not the only fuck up on this planet. And when I brought that perspective into that, I started applying it to my writing. I started applying it to the way that I dressed, the way that I spoke to people. I had somebody a few years ago that used to work for me, that hasn't been on my team for a while, but would always try to correct the things that I would say. Oh, you say fuck too much. You do this too much. You're going to make people uncomfortable. My thing is that if we're forming a new relationship, if you're going to be listening to my music, if you're going to be reading, my articles or whatever, don't you want to know what it is you're getting into? Why surprise people if they're trying to invest in your art? If walking in, all right, let's just go ahead and put a parental advisory tag on this one, but that's the vibe that you want today. we don't want to be Tupac every day. Sometimes we want to be a little bit more Bruno Mars, but sometimes we want to be Tupac. You feel me? And with that in mind, I realized, why am I questioning myself? Why do I feel as though what I have to offer the world, why do I question whether or not what I have to put out here is worthy? When I turn on the TV or I turn on the radio or I open a book, or open Facebook or anything like that, I see all these other people in positions of success that took a chance on themselves. And the most interesting about all of this is that every time I have taken a chance on myself, whether I've won or I've lost, and there has been a ton of loss, by the way. I know a lot of people, when you read the bio, you only hear about the wins. It's like, yeah, Letterman, Trevor Noah, Jimmy Kimmel. I'm like, hell yeah, I did that 3 years ago, 2 years ago. And then I have to ask myself, all right, what's next? And am I okay if the win that comes next, because I'm due for another win, am I okay if it's not another TV show? Am I okay if there are artists that come after me that are 10 times bigger than I'll ever be? And my answer is always yes. Because when I wake up in the morning, whatever time that is, I'm doing what I want to do. And I say whatever time that is because when I signed up to do this music shit full time, I had some boundaries. And I want to go through this list of boundaries because I feel as though whatever it is you do, I assume some of folks here are either creatives or they're entrepreneurs of some sort, or maybe you're trying to do something different or pursue something else other than what you're doing right now, because that's usually who comes and talks to me, is other crazy people. The boundaries that I wanted to set up for myself were not about other people. The boundaries were for myself and making sure that I was okay. So I told myself, all right, if I'm going to be home from tour or whatever, I don't want to wake up ever before 10 a.m. No meetings, no phone calls, no internet, no nothing. Because for me, before 10 a.m., that's an accidental wake up time if that's not your natural body clock. But I've learned that at 10:30, I am here. I am ready for you. Whatever you want to talk about, especially if I've had my coffee. The same thing goes for when I need to be off. I've had to learn the hard way that when I come home, home is home. That means friends, that means family, that means obligations. It's basically like returning back to, a family reunion or something. And I had to learn that because I'm not home all the time, people want to catch up. People want to know what I've been up to and vice versa. As a good friend, I should be wanting to know the same stuff. But I had to learn, if you're home for a week and you got plans on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and you leave on Saturday, at what point do I get to hear my own self think? At what point do I get to just chill and relax? And honestly, at first I didn't know how to chill and I didn't know how to relax. All I knew was how to be everything to everybody, to a point where I started driving myself crazy. I started missing appointments. I started missing a lot of everything because I was so frustrated because I just needed a break. But I had done it to myself. Why? Because I couldn't say no. Why? Because I didn't want to hurt people's feelings. Why? Because I didn't want to disappoint people. But I had to learn that, okay, boundaries is a part of that work-life balance that comes with being an entrepreneur, that comes with being a successful artist or whatever it is you want to be. Because if you don't set them up, you are allowing your life, be it your personal or your professional life, to consume what is left of your just subconscious life that should only be for you and only you. I wanted to spend most of my time during this talk, though, talking about failing, because a lot of people don't talk about a lot of the failures. And when I say failure, I don't necessarily mean stopping, because that to me are two different things. Stopping is completely giving up. Failing is when something that you were really counting on to happen or something you really wanted to happen just didn't pan out. That doesn't mean that you're better or worse for it. It's just something that happens, and nobody really prepares you for how to fail. And so I love talking about it because I feel as though if I bring it up, people might feel less less. That doesn't make any sense, but in this moment, we're going to say lesser than less. I want you guys to feel amazing. We went on a tour from January until this past Monday, which is insane. Usually, your average touring band will be out for 2 to 3 weeks. But because we hadn't taken care of a few things that we needed to take care of last year, we were in a situation where we had to do what you call in the industry a reset. A reset tour is where you go back to rooms that you've outgrown, that you might not want have ever to have seen again, and you go back and you prove that you can sell them out. Because most festivals, if you're not on a major label, if you're not on a major management company, they want to see, well, where's the value? What do you have to offer? And you can be like, oh, well, here's my bio. Well, we have 20,000 other bands over here with the same bio. So what is it that you have to offer? Money, bodies. Okay, prove it. And so we spent 2 months playing some of the sketchiest rooms that you could imagine at a level of band where, I'm going to try to compare this in a more mainstream way. Okay, so when you're dealing with a corporate job, you start off at a junior level position, right? And then you go to, let's say, associate. Then you go to manager. Then you start going into the director, senior manager. Then you hit associate director, executive director. And then if you're really about that life, CFO, CEO, big money, big problems, big responsibilities. When you are a musician, a touring musician, there are similar levels, but they don't have those titles. To compare it to mainstream, let's say Beyonce, Adele, Lady Gaga, those people at the top, those are going to be your CEOs. Those are the people that have been here for a while. They've been doing it for a while. They've gone through the level. And I include Adele in that, even though she's considered new to a lot of people. She's been doing this for more than half of her life and started off in the coffee shops. Same with Lady Gaga, starting off in these little small clubs. Beyonce, Astroworld. We all know the history, right? When you're talking about a more mid-level band, so let's say your Foo Fighters, your Red Hot Chili Peppers, same kind of thing. And I say mid-level because if you were to put a festival lineup, your Foo Fighters and your Red Hot Chili Peppers are going to be behind the 3 women that I just mentioned. Then you start getting into your, let's say, executive level, where it's like, all right, money's doing all right. We ain't struggling so much, but we're doing all right. So that would be like your Leon Bridges, your Kurung Benz, your, let's say, PJ Morton out of New Orleans. And then you're dealing with bands like us, where we've just made manager, but we still waiting for our payment. And anybody that has ever worked as a retail manager knows exactly what the hell I mean, where it's like, here's your title. Let's talk about your paycheck in 6 months. But the difference is that when you're an artist, it's not just about you and your boss. It's because you are the boss, technically, unless you are working through a label, like a major label. It is about what you have to offer before that industry even thinks about promoting you. And so we've been playing this game where it's, well, you're not an associate. We're not going to make you fold clothes. We're not going to put you in the fitting room. And, if you want to go back to the stock room, we'll put you back there. If you don't want to be out here, that's cool. And that's something that a lot of people are okay with, because I used to personally love working in the stock room because you didn't have to talk to anybody. But the thing that most of us want more than anything is to be that senior manager role where you get your money, you get to do what you want to do. You don't have to deal with as much responsibility. You don't have to deal with as much public exposure, but you also don't have to worry about that risk that comes with going down a level and not making as much money as you want, or having to go back and work additional jobs. And it's a risk that you take on when you do what you love. And that can be applied, again, to anything. But when it comes to the failure side of it, is that the last 2 months that were spent on the road, we had everything imaginable happen, from 2 van breakdowns. We had 2 different Airbnbs that I am convinced had ghosts inside of it. One of them had surprised taxidermy cats inside of it, which was very fun, and was not in the preview photos of the Airbnb. We had someone sideswipe our van while we were on stage and knock out a mirror. We had the van get fixed, and then a week and a half later had the same error happen. Our bass player left the band. We had 3 people sub in for other people's parts because people had kids and needed to be home for spring break, and we just so happened to be on tour for spring break. But the thing is that you look at all this chaos that's happening. When I came home on Monday, I saw my house and I'm just like, oh my God, thank you, God. Not because of all the bullshit that had happened and not because I was back home, but because I made it through. We made it through. And honestly, as long as you continue to push through, when you're winning, when you're losing, when things are going right, when things are going wrong, when you remember to surround yourself with a team of people that want to see you win, you realize like, oh, wow, I'm closer than I was 3 months ago. Even if you're not slam dunking it every night, well, I'm still not working at that place I was 10 years ago. And even if you are, as long as you're pursuing it just once a day, just once a week. I tell people 5 minutes a day is what? 35 minutes a week? Like that's a minimum. Like that's a little workout for your mind. So even if let's say you're pursuing fashion, all right, 5 minutes looking at an article. You're pursuing, a law degree that you can't afford to go to school for. All right, let's, read the business journals for a little bit. It doesn't really matter what it is that you're doing as long as you're actively working towards it. It's in those moments that you give up where everything that you've put into this becomes valueless. I know it's a little all over the place, but we didn't have that much time, and I wanted to make sure that I talked about a little bit of stuff. But if we have some questions, I'd love to answer as many as possible. Doesn't matter how random, how weird, how dumb, how whatever. I got tons of answers for you. None? Oh, there you go. Yeah, right before I quit it. That last paycheck, they just so happened to get, and I worked corporate for so long that they had no business giving me a physical check. I was on direct deposit for years. But the accountant said, oh, well, since this is going to be your last check, if you want, we can just give it to you now so that you don't have to work for it, or you don't have to work for it. You don't have to wait for it. And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, this is great, fine. And I open the check up and, it has all the taxes that they've taken out. And I'm like, all right. And I'm like, man, all right, I was making this much. Dang, I didn't even think I was going to be saying bye to this insurance. Dang, am I really? Wait, I made how much? This is just for 2. Damn. Every day, the first year after, I was like, if I go back at the end of this tour, nobody will ever judge me. After we played Letterman, I was like, if I go back and I say, well, I quit my job so I could play Letterman, anybody would be like, oh, yeah, we understand. But you flash forward, it's been 4 years since that happened, 8 years since we started this year. And when I think back on the old life, I don't miss it. Sometimes I look up and I'll see those little squares that they used to have at a lot of those offices. And I used to stare at the squares in the sky at my old office all the time. And I would just be like, man, if I never have to see these fucking squares again, it'd be great. So not seeing those squares is what really keeps me from going back. The monotony is always way more or less interesting than the money, if that's where your mind is. If you want the money, no judgment, because there is none. Anyway, yeah. Yeah. So finding the right team is trial and error. And again, like I say that in generalizations because I know a lot of people don't realize how similar industry structure is when it comes to music, when it comes to corporate America, when it comes to anything, because at the end of the day, it's still a business. The only difference is that if you are choosing to be an independent entrepreneur, an artist or whatever, you are immediately the CEO until you decide otherwise. So it's on you to decide what type of team you want, what type of culture you want to create, what type of rules you want to have, what you'll stand for, what you won't stand for. For us, we had the same manager for about 3.5 years. No, 5 years, my brain. 5 years. And when we left him, it felt like a full-on breakup. Like, and I don't put that lightly. But I forget the guy who it was that was speaking, but Bun B's manager posted something earlier today where it's a video of a manager asking, this is what happens when you ask me to become your manager. You're asking me to treat you like my child. You're asking me to put your needs before mine, your wants before mine, and to execute those and know that if I don't get them, you'll be disappointed in me. And you're also asking me if I would be okay if you left me suddenly, because that's normal and that's part of the industry. For us, we got a new management company in September, but finding the right company was a nightmare because nobody teaches you down here. And honestly, I say down here, but honestly, nobody really teaches you at all, whether you're in LA or New York, doesn't matter, how to navigate the world of finding people that give a fuck about you, because there are no directions. It's just as hard as finding the right partner or finding people to start a business with, finding people to trust your business with. It's trust and knowing that you're not always going to have people there that are going to do a good job. And knowing that once you realize they're not doing a good job, who has to fire them? The boss. And it's not a fun feeling. It's not a fulfilling feeling. But I will say that I am so grateful for every person that has been on our team and every person that has left our team, because it happened for a reason. And the happiness and the stability that I have right now is because of those people that have been in and out. As far as picking them, as far as knowing, there's no knowing. The picking goes back to it being your decision. I will say that I have made it my life's mission to surround myself with people that do what I want to do at a level that I haven't reached yet. So that doesn't mean like, I don't know Beyonce or Adele. I'm not calling them. But I got friends like a woman named Nicole Atkins, who a lot of people have, they haven't heard of her. But Nicole has been in this industry forever. She was signed to Columbia very young and has been very vocal about the fact that she struggled with addiction and booze for a long time. So people didn't take her as seriously, and she ended up losing, a lot of connections while she was struggling to get sober. But I was one of her friends after she got sober that I don't know who she used to be. So who am I to judge her? And so she's been able to give me so much advice, not only as my friend, but as a musician that has been in here for so long, that when it came time for us to split ways with our former manager, I asked her, what should I do? Like, he's family, he's friends. Like, I would never want him to feel like we are making a decision to hurt him when he's put so much work into us. And she said, at the end of the day, what you are doing is a business, and it is about having those necessary resources as a business to get to where you need to get to. And while, yes, the people on your team, they become your friends, they become your family. But if they are still a part of this industry at the end of the day, they know what it is that they have to offer and what they can't give to you. So just like in a breakup, if you're not getting what you need, They might, they might get upset with you. They might cry. They might whatever when you're breaking up with them. But then when they leave and you leave, there's that little sense of freedom. And then 6 months later, a year later, however much time it is that passes, when you see each other again and you see them doing well and you see yourself doing well and you're both in spaces that you never thought you would get to without each other, realizing that you can be happy beyond the people that got you to the current state of happiness is a really powerful, powerful point in your life that so many of us never get to because we get so stuck in the feeling of, well, I don't want to disappoint them. Well, I don't want to make them feel bad. Well, I don't want to be the person to initiate this separation. But if you want to be the boss, that's what you got to learn how to do. Anybody else? We'll do him first, and then we'll do you. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the mute button on social media is amazing. I swear to God, right now, I follow 2,000 people or something on Instagram. I actually follow like 45 people, and most of them are dogs. And the reason that it's like that is because jealousy is a normal feeling. It is a normal feeling. Not feeling like you are doing enough is a normal feeling. Feeling like you are behind is a normal feeling. But when you're hitting yourself from all ends, and social media is like this, it's like inspiration, great. All the stuff to make me want to do more work, great. Oh, inspo. And then you realize when you're in a period of depression, or maybe you're having a block as an artist, or maybe something is not right, your inspo becomes your resentment. Your inspo becomes your I'm not good enough. Your inspo becomes your, well, I'm not producing work fast enough. Your inspo becomes, well, I don't look like that. I can't afford to look like that. I can't afford to have a presentation like that. I can't do this. I can't do that. When in actuality, you can. You might not be able to do it right now, today, that way. You shouldn't want to, because that's not you. The point of inspiration is to make you get your ass up to do something that is greater than you are, that is within you. Not to go out and copy what somebody else is doing, not to go and try to compare yourself to what somebody else is doing. Because if you try to keep up with the Joneses, you're going to lose every time. But if you're focusing on you and you keep tabs on yourself, the way that we keep tabs on these celebrities, these artists, these whatever, the next thing you realize, wow, my shit's getting pretty good, and whatever that may be, it's just, we spend so much time minding business that's not our own that we never get the return from the business that we've been minding. We've given it to somebody else. For every view, for every song, for anything that you do that is not yours, you giving that to somebody else. You on Spotify and you jamming, you giving 0.0000000000002 to somebody, So y'all better listen to that percentage, because they ain't giving you no money. What's your question? Mm-hmm. Alarms, snack incentives, and vice incentives. So whatever my vice may be, right now the only vice I really have is marijuana, which is not really vice. I will have a pre-rolled joint at the end of a table. That is not allowed to be smoked until I have finished whatever song, whatever thing I'm writing, whatever interview I'm supposed to be working on, exercise, whatever. Like a little kid, Okay, all right. Or it goes in reverse. I can't do a lot of stuff unless I've eaten. But I know how much I have to eat before I can start something. I just have to get that little bit of a protein fix, but some people might not be the same way that I am. But I have learned over the years that I am a very hangry person, very proud of it. And shame on folks that make you feel weird when you're hangry. Like, bitch, you should have brought some snacks. Like, that's how I feel about it. Like, for us and my mood that you didn't know I was bringing. But, but it's the boundaries that I set up for myself, even though they're very silly, even though they're very juvenile, they have worked for me. Because you know what? We like being incentivized as human beings. And that's for everything at all. You go to certain concerts nowadays, a lot of celebrities will tell you, okay, because the industry's so shit, they'll say, hey, if you buy a piece of merch or if you buy a CD from me, I'll take a photo with you after the show. We don't do that shit because we're trying to sell as much as possible. But a few years ago, a very dear friend invited me to a concert. And I didn't know what concert we were going to. One of his friends just so happened to be working the concert. And he was like, we're going to be able to chill backstage. So I was like, okay, whatever, that's fine. I show up, and this is very important to the story because it actually is very funny to me, wearing a canary yellow sundress. Because I'm like, it's sunny, it's Houston, it's bright outside. And he's like, yeah, we're going to the Woodlands. I was like, well, what band is it? And he goes, hold on, I forgot to ask. Gets back on the phone. 30 Seconds to Mars in Lincoln Park. And I'm like, all right, well, this is my outfit. So we get there, and I'm wearing bright yellow, and literally everything around me, even though it's the middle of summer, black beanie, black hoodie, black, everything, black pants, chain, black boots, just black. And I'm just like, well, I'm here. And, we end up getting to meet everybody that was there. And I was only interested in meeting Jared Leto. But the thing is that, and y'all, it was great. But while we were there, this was after he won the Oscar, after he won the Grammy. So he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to go and take photos with anybody. But he incentivized about 10,000 people or however many people you can fit at the Woodlands to go and buy his merch, which any person ever that has had a Jared Leto crush was probably like, yo, let me see how much money I have real quick. I don't care, whatever. And when we walked by, the line is around the block, but that's a boundary at the same time because he knew, okay, if I'm going to do this, it's going to be a swarm. So he limited it only to people that bought that merch because that money was going to come back to him directly as, compared to selling a record. But he has security. He has couches set up. He had, it was comfortable for him as a person to be able to do that. Where for somebody else, they might not be so free. I know that for a lot of artists, sometimes people get really handsy. Sometimes people get very aggressive. And it becomes a very highly stressful anxiety situation for them. So you have a lot of folks that aren't so open to, doing the photo thing. But it's whatever works for you. And for me, I know my little treats system works for me. You got to figure out what works for you. And I've learned that when I don't stick to that system, I start getting lax about a lot more other stuff too. Like yesterday evening, I said yesterday night, Wednesday night, it's going to be my night off. I went to a friend's birthday party. I was out by 6:30. My phone is blowing up. This is going on over here. This is going on over there. This is happening. And I'm just like, man, is Chicago Fire the same thing as Chicago PD? I don't know. I'm going to figure this out. And I sat on my couch. They're not the same, but they're both executively produced by Dick Wolf. And I felt so fulfilled when I woke up this morning because I knew that, because I chose to stay my ass at home last night, because that's what I wanted to do for myself my first week back in 2 weeks. Had this been a year ago, 2 years ago, I would have probably been at Little Danny Speedo's until 2 a.m. last night, looking some kind of very haggard in here with y'all and just like, on my bullshit. But the thing is that by me setting that boundary, by me acknowledging that I'm getting older and that maybe I don't want to be drunk when I come home. Maybe I don't want to be outside all the time. I'd rather be in beautiful spaces like this, and have my evening end at 8:30, but I'm still out, It's what you decide to set up for you that works for you. And it's the reason also that I'm going, into such ridiculous detail with these, stories and these analogies, because I want you guys to know that there are so many levels to a boundary. There are so many levels to just choosing you. And from big to small, the fact that you just put that effort in means you're trying. Anybody else? Yeah. 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 Sometimes I don't know if there's ever true peace that comes with it until you've walked away from it. Um, Relationships are one thing, but people don't realize that friendships take as much work as romantic relationships do. Those girls trips, those bachelorette parties, those bachelor parties. Those are like supposed to be once in a lifetime events. But the thing is that outside of those things, and that's why people be acting so wild on them. A lot of folks give up on their friends and they give up on who they are as individuals after they get married. I don't say everybody, but I say a lot of people do that because it's normal and it happens. And when you start having kids, they become your number one, not, catching up with your girl that has all these, dude problems. But the thing is that if you want to preserve those relationships, people don't realize that just checking up on folks is such a simple thing. The how you doing text goes such a long way. But knowing when you've outgrown somebody, again, like the best way I would compare that to is in a relationship, a romantic relationship, where there's not really, oh, well, hey, Karen, I've outgrown you. I'll see you later. Just waking up one morning, and if you do have somebody like that, they're probably a sociopath, but it's usually a lot of reflection before you actually make that jump away. I don't really like it when he does that, or I don't really like it when she does that. I don't really like the people that they hang out with. I don't really like any of this. And you start realizing that a lot of the stuff that person does that you don't really like is really starting to add up. And at a certain point, and I think the same could be said about whether you're firing somebody, whether you're breaking up with somebody, whether you're moving on from somebody, it doesn't really matter. At a certain point, there's just a point where you can't take it anymore. And I think that's the answer. And I hope, actually, maybe the sociopath I'm thinking of is actually onto something, but with that like way too open communication. But the thing is that when it's somebody that you really care about, that's working for you, that's on your team, that's in your life, that's your friend or whatever, you don't want to just immediately walk away from that relationship. But at the same time, you don't want to create a toxic environment for yourself just because you're trying to make sure this person doesn't, feel bad. Because everybody knows what happens when you don't walk away. Does it get better? No, right? No, it doesn't get better. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Last call? Yeah. Huh? I went to sleep this morning at 4 a.m. Oh, do y'all think that I work less because I wake up later? Because a lot of people really do be thinking that. No, honey, no. I'm not really into the whole, oh my God, the sun's rising. I'm like, hell no, black these curtains out. Cause nah. Um, if I'm not on tour, it's really hard for me to fall asleep at any certain time. And when I say I don't wake up before 10, that also doesn't mean that I don't wake up before, like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't like waking up after 11 a.m. So between 10 and 11 is my natural waking hour. It's usually I can still catch a little bit of the Price is Right before I start jumping into whatever it is I'm trying to work on. And then I get started with my day. But I take a lot of breaks because I didn't take very many breaks at all when I worked in corporate America. So I feel like now that I'm the boss, breaks are normal, breaks are good. And you know what happens when you take a break? Your work is better. It's so much better because a lot of times when you leave and you come back, oh wait, why did I do it like that? Why did I make it that color? Why do I sound like that? What was I thinking? Or this is the best shit ever, like, which is rarely happens, but when it happens, you're like, yeah, I'm the best. Which I hope you all have a feeling within yourself eventually. I don't want to be the only person sounding like that in here, but it allows me to continue living the way that I want to live when I wake up that late and also when I stay up that late. I can't work past 5 a.m. though. That's bad. 5 a.m. I'm like, oh wait, this is what time people actually start waking up. Have you noticed that? If someone's like, yeah, man, I got to be at work at 4 or 5, you're just kind of like, why? Unless they work at Starbucks, you're like, why? But if someone's like, oh, I go to bed or I go to work at 6, 7, 8, 9, you're like, oh, okay. But let you be that one, I go to work at 9:30. 9:30, like, it's so funny, people's perceptions of time and the efficiency that goes along with that. But it's crazy. I didn't even really think I stayed up till 4 this morning, but I definitely did. What happens is, and this happened actually after a great episode of Chicago Fire last night. I watched the episode. I hadn't seen the show before, but I was like, Dick Wolf, all right, I'm signed in. I'm good. I watched the show, and then I started writing this really, it's probably really whack now that I think about it, but I started kind of writing this song inspired by this episode. And the thing is that I try to write a song every day. It doesn't have to be a good song. It doesn't have to be about anything, but it's just a practice for my brain to get that creative energy out. And so last night's song was about kind of like on some Sophie's Choice kind of stuff, where I was like, if I were trapped in a house and it were between my 2 firefighter boyfriends to, get me, who would be the first one to come and get me? And this isn't a song that I would want to listen to or share with any of you. But before I went to bed, I was like, okay, it's done. And then I woke up 35 minutes later because I realized I wasn't tired, and I ended up making music for another 2 or 3 hours. And I'm also in a space where every year I try to learn a new skill that contributes to my musicality, that contributes to my writing, whatever, because again, as that CEO, you have to make sure that you're evolving with your business. So the same way that an accountant or an attorney or a doctor has to go and get all those, licenses every now and then to make sure that everything's still up and current, I honestly think that musicians should be doing that same thing. I think that creatives should be doing that same thing too. I think that all entrepreneurs should make sure that you know what is modern, what is happening, and what is going on in your industry, who the stars of your industry are, who the pioneers are, who is, retiring, so that you can get an overall glimpse of what might be your own personal track, your own personal vision of what true success looks like. Because if you don't have that idea in your mind of, okay, I'm going to sing forever, I might retire at 80 and then come back, I don't know, like whatever your vision is for yourself, if you don't have that, you're going to constantly feel in a state of chaos, or you're going to be one of these, well, I don't really know what's happening. Like, just because I'm a musician doesn't mean I don't want a 401k. Just because I'm a musician doesn't mean I don't like going on vacations. Like, I don't want to own things. I'm an adult. I want to make sure that whoever is coming into my life, that I am bringing stuff of value to them. So this is a very long answer to your question about how late I stayed up last night. Anybody else? I think we're done, yeah? Thank you, guys. This was great. I appreciate y'all.